The first trial was called the Maze of Echoes, and Jake stood at its entrance trying not to show his fear. The structure rose before him like a monument to alien technology, its walls shimmering with energy that made his eyes hurt if he looked at it too long. According to the information Peter had gathered, this maze existed in virtual reality, projected directly into the mind of whoever entered it. The experience would feel completely real, including the pain if the digital predators caught him. Most participants take 3 days to complete this trial, Peter said, reviewing his notes one more time. Some never make it out at all. Their minds break under the stress and they have to be pulled out. Lauren checked Jake's vital monitor one last time. The predators inside learn from every move you make. They adapt. The longer you stay in there, the smarter they get. Jake nodded, trying to focus on the plan they had discussed. But plans made in safety often fell apart when real danger arrived. He stepped forward and technicians attached neural sensors to his head. The last thing he saw before the world dissolved around him was Lauren's worried face. Then he was somewhere else entirely. The maze stretched in every direction, walls of dark stone reaching up into a sky that flickered between day and night. The air smelled of rain and rust. Jake took a step forward and the ground felt solid beneath his boots. His weapons were gone, replaced by a simple knife at his belt. That was the rule, only basic tools allowed in the maze. He heard something move behind him. Turning quickly, he saw nothing but empty corridor, but the sound came again, closer now. A scraping noise like claws on stone. Jake started moving, forcing himself to think clearly despite the adrenaline flooding his system. The maze wanted him to panic, to run blindly. That was how most people failed. Instead, he walked carefully, studying the walls, the floor, the way the shadows fell. The predator appeared suddenly, dropping from above. It looked like a wolf made of shadows, its eyes burning white. Jake rolled aside as it struck, feeling claws pass close enough to tear his sleeve. The creature landed gracefully and turned to face him, its body coiling to spring again. But Jake was already analyzing it. The way it moved, the way it positioned itself, the timing of its attack. He had spent years studying combat, both human and animal. This predator was fast and strong, but it followed patterns. He ran, but not blindly. He led the shadow wolf down specific corridors, watching how it pursued him. It was learning, yes, but that meant it was also predictable. Machine learning followed rules, even when those rules were complex. More predators appeared over the next hour. Some looked like cats, others like birds of prey, others like nothing from Earth at all. They coordinated their attacks, trying to drive Jake into traps or corner him in dead ends. Each time he barely escaped, and each time he learned more about how they operated. Then Jake stopped running. He had seen enough. The predators were programmed to hunt the most dangerous target, the most threatening opponent. That made sense for a trial designed to test warriors. But what if he stopped being threatening? Jake started moving erratically. He stumbled, fell, got up slowly as if injured. He made noise, breathing hard, sometimes crying out as if in pain. He made himself look weak, scared, defeated. The predators changed their behavior immediately. Instead of coordinated attacks, they started taking turns, playing with him like cats with a mouse. They got closer, more confident, less cautious. That was exactly what Jake wanted. He led them into a section of the maze where the walls formed narrow passages. The predators followed eagerly, sensing an easy kill, but narrow passages worked both ways. When they could only attack one at a time, their numbers meant nothing. Jake dropped the act. When the first predator lunged, he sidestepped and drove his knife into it. The creature exploded into pixels and disappeared. The others hesitated, suddenly uncertain. Jake pressed forward, using the narrow space to his advantage, eliminating predators one at a time. But that was not his real strategy. While he fought, he was moving toward the center of the maze. Peter had explained that virtual constructs like this needed a central processing core, a point where all the data converged. If Jake could reach that point, he could find the way out. The maze tried to stop him. Walls shifted, passages closed. New predators appeared faster than he could fight them. But Jake kept moving, kept adapting. He used debris to jam doors open. He climbed walls that looked unclimbable. He used the predators themselves as weapons, causing them to collide with each other in their eagerness to catch him. Hours passed. Jake's body was exhausted, covered in scratches and bruises that felt completely real despite being digital. His mind screamed for rest, but he pushed forward, getting closer to the center with each step. Finally, he burst into a circular chamber where all the maze's passages converged. In the center floated a sphere of light pulsing with energy. The exit. But between Jake and the sphere stood the largest predator yet. It looked like a combination of every creature he had faced, the maze's final guardian. It moved with terrifying speed, and Jake knew he could not defeat it in direct combat, so he did not try. Instead, he ran straight at it. The predator attacked exactly as Jake expected, but he had studied its components, knew how each part would react. He slid under its first strike, rolled past its second, and used its own momentum to throw it off balance. Before it could recover, Jake was past it, diving through the sphere of light. The maze vanished. Jake found himself back at the entrance, gasping for air, the neural sensors being removed from his head. Lauren caught him as he stumbled, and Peter was shouting something about time records. 8 hours, Peter said, his voice filled with amazement. You completed the maze of echoes in 8 hours. The previous record was 2 days. Jake could barely process the words. He felt like he had been fighting for days, not hours. But around him he could hear the crowd of alien spectators making sounds of surprise and respect. Vector stood in the observation area, his expression unreadable. For just a moment Jake thought he saw uncertainty in those glowing red eyes. But there was no time to rest. The second trial began the next day. The summit of Will was different from the maze. It was physical, brutally real. Jake stood at the base of a mountain on a planet where gravity was twice Earth's normal. The air was thin, and every breath felt like fire in his lungs. Strapped to his back was a neural inhibitor, a device that would assault his mind with his worst fears and doubts as he climbed. The mountain is 10,000 feet high, the trial master explained, a floating alien that looked like a jellyfish made of light. Most climbers abandon the attempt within the first 1,000 feet. Those who persist often go mad. Only the strongest wills reach the summit. Jake started climbing. Within minutes, the inhibitor activated. He saw Earth burning, cities turning to ash under alien weapons. He saw his crew dying, screaming his name as they fell. He saw his daughter crying, asking why Daddy had abandoned her. The visions were so real, so vivid, that he could not tell them from reality. His hand slipped on the rock. His legs trembled from more than just the gravity. The weight of guilt and fear pressed down on him harder than any physical burden. You're not good enough, a voice whispered in his mind. You've never been good enough. Everyone who trusted you will suffer because you're weak. Jake fell. He caught himself on a ledge, barely, his fingers scraping raw against stone. He hung there, his body screaming in agony, his mind showing him nothing but failure and death. For a long moment, he considered letting go. It would be so easy. The pain would stop. The visions would end. Then he heard music. It was faint at first, almost lost in the wind. But it grew stronger, clearer. A child's voice singing a simple song. His daughter's voice. Jake remembered teaching her that song. Remembered her laughing when he got the words wrong. Remembered the way she hugged him when he left for this mission, making him promise to come home. The visions were still there, still terrible. But now he had something to hold on to, a memory that the inhibitor could not corrupt. He pulled himself up onto the ledge and kept climbing. The mountain tried everything to stop him. Storms that threatened to tear him from the rock. Hallucinations so powerful he could not distinguish them from reality. Physical exhaustion that made every movement agony. But Jake climbed. When his arms failed, he used his legs. When his legs failed, he used his willpower. The song played in his mind over and over, an anchor to sanity. 3 days later, bleeding and broken but still conscious, Jake pulled himself onto the summit. He lay there, unable to move, barely able to breathe. But he had made it. The trial master appeared beside him, its light dimmed with what might have been respect. You have passed the second trial. Jake Morrison stood at the window of Earth's newest starship, watching as the blue marble of his homeworld grew smaller behind them. He had been a soldier for 15 years, had fought in 3 wars and had seen things that would give most people nightmares. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. Humanity was about to meet the galaxy, and he was leading the way. The ship moved faster than light, bending space itself to cross distances that should have taken lifetimes. It still amazed Jake every time he saw the stars stretch and blur around them. Just 5 years ago, this technology had been science fiction. Now it was carrying them toward the center of the galaxy, toward a meeting that would decide humanity's future. Lauren Hayes sat at the navigation console, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. She had been Jake's tactical officer for 7 years, and he trusted her judgment more than anyone else on the ship. Next to her, Peter Grant reviewed data on his tablet, muttering to himself about quantum frequencies and gravitational anomalies. Peter was their science advisor, a genius who could explain the most complex ideas in ways that even soldiers could understand. "We're approaching the Axis Prime system," Lauren announced. "Should drop out of faster than light in about 10 minutes. Jake nodded and returned to the command chair. The crew around him worked quietly, efficiently. They were the best Earth had to offer, but he wondered if that would be enough. The message from the Galactic Council had been clear. Humanity was invited to present itself for evaluation. What that evaluation meant, no one from Earth truly understood. The ship shuddered as it dropped back into normal space. Through the forward viewports, a massive structure appeared. It looked like a wheel the size of a small moon rotating slowly in the darkness. Lights covered its surface, and ships of every imaginable design swarmed around it like insects around a hive. "That's the Council headquarters," Peter said, his voice filled with awe. "The station is over 2,000 years old. It houses representatives from 847 different species." Jake felt a weight settle in his stomach. 847 species. Each one more advanced than humanity. Each one with centuries or millennia of experience in the galaxy. And Earth was the newcomer, the primitive species that had just learned to travel between stars. A communication came through, not in English, but somehow Jake understood it perfectly. The translation technology the Council had provided worked flawlessly. "Earth vessel, you are cleared for docking bay 772. Proceed immediately." The docking process took an hour. The station was so massive that their ship looked like a toy next to it. When they finally stepped out onto the docking platform, Jake got his first real look at the galaxy beyond Earth. Aliens were everywhere. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, others on 4, 6, or 8. Some floated, their bodies barely substantial. One creature looked like living crystal, its form catching and reflecting light in dazzling patterns. The air smelled strange, like ozone mixed with something sweet and something bitter. Signs in hundreds of languages covered the walls, though Jake's translator displayed them all in English. "Stay close," Jake said to his team. "And remember, we're here to make friends, not enemies." A tall, thin alien approached them. Its skin was pale blue and its eyes were too large for its narrow face. "Commander Morrison, I am Ambassador Thelen of the Valasian delegation. I will escort you to the council chambers." They followed Thelen through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. Everywhere Jake looked, he saw wonders. Markets where aliens traded goods from across the galaxy, gardens with plants that moved and sang, windows looking out into space where massive ships came and went like clockwork. "Your species is very young," Thelen said as they walked. "Most civilizations do not achieve faster than light travel until they have at least 10,000 years of recorded history. Humans have done it in less than 6,000. This is unusual. Is that good or bad?" Lauren asked. Thelen's expression was unreadable. "That is for the council to decide." They entered a vast chamber shaped like an amphitheater. Thousands of seats rose in circular tiers, each one occupied by an alien representative. At the center of the chamber stood a raised platform, and at the highest point sat a figure that made Jake's blood run cold. The being was massive, easily 9 feet tall even while seated. Its skin looked like polished black stone, and its eyes glowed with a dull red light. It wore armor that seemed to be part of its body, covered in scars and symbols that Jake guessed were battle honors. This was Supreme Commander Vector, leader of the Galactic Council. "Humans." Vector's voice boomed through the chamber, and despite the translation, it carried a tone of contempt. "You stand before the Council to be evaluated. We will determine if your species deserves a place among the civilized races of the galaxy." Jake walked to the center platform, refusing to show fear. "We come in peace, seeking friendship and trade with the galaxy." Vector laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Peace, trade, every primitive species says the same words. But do you understand what it means to be part of the Council? It means accepting our laws, our guidance, our protection." "Protection from what?" Jake asked. "From yourselves," Vector said. "From the chaos that young species bring. From the wars and destruction that follow when civilizations advance too quickly without wisdom to guide them." Jake felt anger rising in his chest but kept his voice calm. "Humanity has made mistakes, but we've also learned from them. We don't need to be protected from ourselves. We need partners equals who will help us grow. The chamber erupted in noise. Some aliens seemed to agree with Jake, others laughed or made sounds of disapproval. Vector raised a hand and silence fell immediately. Equals? Vector's eyes focused on Jake with an intensity that was almost physical. You believe your species is equal to civilizations that have traveled the stars for millennia? You believe you can stand among us as partners? I believe every species deserves respect, Jake said. And I believe that wisdom doesn't only come with age. Sometimes fresh perspectives see problems that old eyes miss. Vector stood, and his full height was terrifying. He moved down from his seat and approached Jake, each step deliberate and threatening. You have courage, human. Foolish courage, but courage nonetheless. Very well. I will give you a chance to prove your worth. He gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. I invoke the trial of supremacy, an ancient right that allows any species to challenge for their place in the council. You will face 5 trials, each designed to test the qualities we value: strategy, willpower, strength, wisdom, and combat. Jake felt Lauren tense beside him. Peter had gone pale. They all understood what this meant. If you succeed in all 5 trials, Vector continued, humanity will be granted full membership in the council with all rights and protections. But if you fail even one trial, Earth will become a vassal world. Your resources will serve the council. Your people will follow our laws without question. Your development will be controlled and limited as we see fit. The chamber waited in silence. Jake knew this was a trap. The trial was designed to be impossible, a way to legitimize Earth subjugation while appearing fair. But he also knew that refusing would be seen as cowardice, and would likely result in the same outcome. He thought of Earth, of the billions of people whose future rested on his decision. He thought of his daughter, only 8 years old, and the world she would inherit. Then he looked directly at Vector and spoke clearly. I accept your challenge. Vector's smile was cold and cruel. Excellent. You have 7 days to prepare. The first trial begins at dawn on the 8th day. Try not to die too quickly, human. I want the galaxy to see what happens when primitive species reach beyond their grasp. As they were escorted from the chamber, Lauren whispered, Jake, what have you done? Jake watched Vector through the crowd of aliens, seeing the confidence in the Supreme Commander's posture. I've bought us time, he said quietly, and maybe, just maybe, a chance to show the galaxy what humans are really capable of. The council chamber exploded with noise when Jake made his announcement. Standing on the central platform despite his injuries, despite the doctors telling him he needed weeks of recovery, he faced Supreme Commander Vector directly. I invoke the ancient right of immediate challenge, Jake said, his voice carrying across the vast space. I demand to face you in the 5th trial now without delay. Vector stood from his throne, his massive form radiating anger. You have not completed the 4th trial. The test of wisdom must be passed before you can face me. The rules say that a challenger can request immediate confrontation if they believe the trials are being manipulated, Jake replied. He had spent the night studying every line of the ancient laws governing the trial of supremacy, looking for any advantage. I invoke that right, unless you're afraid to face me. The crowd's noise grew louder. Jake had just publicly questioned Vector's courage, something that had not been done in living memory. The Supreme Commander's eyes blazed with rage, but Jake also saw something else there. Calculation. Vector knew something was wrong, knew that someone had been digging into the Council's secrets. He wanted this finished quickly, before whatever plan was unfolding could complete. Very well, Vector said coldly. We will fight tomorrow at dawn. Personal combat, traditional weapons until one of us yields or dies. Since you are so eager to face me, human, I will grant your wish. As Jake left the chamber, Lauren caught his arm. That was insane. You can barely walk, and you just challenged the greatest warrior in the galaxy. I bought us time, Jake said quietly. 1 more day for Peter and the free voices to prepare. And I got Vector angry, which means he'll be careless. He'll also be trying to kill you, Lauren pointed out. That was always going to happen. Back in their quarters, Peter had set up a command center with equipment provided by the free voices. Holographic displays showed security patterns, communication networks, and the archived data they had stolen from the quantum database. The broadcast is ready, Peter explained. We'll transmit the evidence on every frequency in every language. Once it starts, the Council won't be able to stop it without shutting down all communications across the station. But timing is critical. If we broadcast too early, Vector will simply have you killed before the fight. If we wait too long, he might kill you before the evidence gets out. Karn appeared on one of the screens, his scaled face serious. My people are in position throughout the station. When the broadcast begins, we will prevent any attempts to shut it down. But Commander Morrison, you must understand. Even if we succeed in exposing Vector, you still have to survive the fight. He is a trained killer with 3 centuries of experience. Your injuries make this nearly impossible. Nearly impossible is better than actually impossible, Jake said. He turned to Lauren. Show me everything Karn sent us about Vector's fighting style. They spent the night analyzing recordings of Vector's past duels. The Supreme Commander fought with a weapon that resembled a combination of spear and sword, using his height and reach to keep opponents at a distance while delivering devastating strikes. He was fast despite his size, and his armor was nearly impenetrable. But as they watched fight after fight, Lauren began to notice patterns. Look at the way he finishes opponents. Every time in the final moments he uses the same combination of attacks. Thrust high, slash low, then a spinning strike to the head. Peter ran the analysis through his computer. She's right. It's always the same sequence. He's so confident in his superiority that he's developed habits. Habits can be exploited, Jake said. But I need to survive long enough to see that finishing sequence. And I need to make him confident enough to use it. The rest of the night passed in preparation. Jake went through physical therapy, pushing his injured body to remember its training despite the pain. Lauren and Peter worked with the free voices to ensure the broadcast would reach every corner of the galaxy, and slowly a plan took shape. Dawn came too quickly. Jake stood in the arena, watching as thousands of spectators filled the seats. The entire galaxy was watching through broadcasts. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for, the ultimate test of the human challenger. Vector entered from the opposite side, and the crowd roared. He wore his full ceremonial armor, covered in the symbols of his victories. His weapon gleamed in the arena lights. He looked like a god of war, and Jake looked like a man who should be in a hospital bed. The trial master, the floating jellyfish alien, explained the rules. Single combat until yield or death. No outside interference. No technology beyond the weapons you carry. When I signal, you may begin. Jake had chosen a human longsword, a simple weapon that felt natural in his hands. It was shorter than Vector's blade, giving him a reach disadvantage. But it was also lighter, faster. If he could survive the Supreme Commander's initial assault, he might have a chance. The signal came. Vector attacked immediately, his blade moving with terrifying speed. Jake barely got his sword up in time to deflect the first strike. The impact sent shockwaves through his arms, and he knew that he could not trade blows with this opponent. He had to move, had to stay mobile. He retreated, letting Vector advance, studying the Supreme Commander's movements. Every fight in the recordings had shown Vector starting aggressively, overwhelming his opponents with pure power. Jake needed to survive that initial storm. Minutes passed like hours. Jake's injured body screamed in protest with every movement, but he kept going. Dodge, deflect, retreat. Never engage directly, never give Vector a solid target. The crowd grew quieter, sensing something unusual. Most of Vector's opponents were defeated within minutes. Jake was still standing after 10. Then he saw his opportunity. Vector's blade came down in a powerful overhead strike. Instead of dodging, Jake stepped to the side and struck quickly at Vector's exposed arm. His blade cut through a joint in the armor, drawing first blood. The crowd gasped. The Supreme Commander stopped, looking at the wound with something like disbelief. No one had injured him in single combat for over a century. His eyes found Jake's, and for the first time there was not just anger there. There was genuine focus, the recognition that this fight might actually be dangerous. Vector changed his approach. No more overwhelming assault. Now he fought carefully, using his reach and experience to control the arena. Jake found himself being herded, manipulated, forced into disadvantageous positions. This was the warrior who had led armies, who had outthought generals with millennia of experience. Jake's strength was fading. The injuries, the exhaustion, the sheer physical toll of fighting a being far stronger than himself. He could feel his movements getting slower, his reactions dulling. Vector sensed it too, and his attacks grew more confident. 15 minutes into the fight, the broadcast began. Every screen in the arena, every device on the station, suddenly showed the same images. Recordings from the quantum archive. Vector manipulating trials. The Council deliberately suppressing species. Orders to destroy civilizations that grew too advanced. Centuries of corruption and tyranny laid bare for all to see. The crowd erupted in chaos. Some aliens stood and shouted in outrage. Others tried to leave, only to find the exits blocked by Free Voices members. The trial master attempted to stop the broadcast, but the signal was coming from everywhere. Impossible to shut down without killing all communications. Vector realized what was happening. His expression shifted from confidence to rage. He roared and launched a brutal assault meant to kill Jake immediately, to end this before the damage could spread. But in his fury, Vector made exactly the mistake Jake had been waiting for. The Supreme Commander abandoned his careful strategy and relied on the technique that had never failed him. The finishing sequence: thrust high, slash low, spinning strike to the head. Jake had studied that sequence for hours. He knew every movement, every timing, every vulnerability. When Vector thrust high, Jake did not try to block. He stepped forward, accepting a wound to his shoulder rather than staying at the distance Vector wanted. The slash low came next. But Jake was already inside Vector's reach, too close for the blade to hit properly. The spinning strike to the head came last, but Jake had dropped low, using his smaller size to stay under the arc of the weapon. And suddenly Jake was inside Vector's guard, closer than any opponent had managed in living memory. With the last of his strength, he drove his sword upward, striking Vector's weapon arm at the wrist. The impact knocked the Supreme Commander's blade from his hand, sending it clattering across the arena floor. Jake's sword came up, the point touching Vector's throat. The arena fell silent. The broadcast continued, showing centuries of crimes. And Jake stood victorious over the being who had ruled the galaxy through fear. Jake stood with his sword at Vector's throat, his body shaking from exhaustion and pain. Blood ran down his arm from the shoulder wound. Every muscle screamed for rest. But his hand remained steady, and his eyes stayed locked on the Supreme Commander. The arena was completely silent. Thousands of aliens watched, barely believing what they were seeing. On every screen, the evidence continued to play. Centuries of manipulation, corruption, and tyranny exposed for all to see. Vector's eyes burned with rage, but also something else: fear. For the first time in his long life, he faced actual defeat. His weapon lay out of reach. His armor meant nothing against a blade already touching his skin. And his secrets were being broadcast across the entire galaxy. "Kill me," Vector said quietly, his voice full of venom. "That is what warriors do. Finish it, human." Jake's sword did not waver, but he shook his head. "I'm not here to kill you. I'm here to show the galaxy that your reign of fear is over." He lowered his sword and stepped back. The crowd erupted in noise, some cheering, others shouting in confusion. Jake turned to face the thousands of spectators, raising his voice to be heard. "Humanity did not come to this galaxy seeking conquest or revenge. We came looking for friends, for partners, for a place among the stars. What we found was a system built on fear and lies. But we also found something else. We found good people from hundreds of worlds who were tired of living under tyranny. This victory is not mine alone. It belongs to everyone who wants a better galaxy." The Free Voices members throughout the arena revealed themselves, standing and showing their allegiance. Karn appeared on the central platform, his scaled face fierce and proud. "For too long we have suffered under the Council's rule," Karn announced. "Today that changes. Today we demand a voice in our own governance. Today we say no more." The trial master tried to restore order, but the chaos was too great. Members of the Council Guard rushed toward the arena floor, clearly intending to arrest everyone involved. But they were met by Free Voices warriors who had infiltrated their ranks over the years. Fighting broke out in multiple locations. Jake grabbed Lauren's arm as she rushed to his side. "Get me out of here. We need to reach our ship before they lock down the station." Peter was already working on his tablet, accessing the station's systems through back doors the Free Voices had created. "I can get us to the docking bay, but we need to move now. Half the council is calling for your execution. The other half wants to offer you medals. Either way, it's dangerous." They moved through the chaos, Lauren supporting Jake's injured body. The station was in complete upheaval. Some aliens celebrated in the corridors. Others fought with council security forces. The broadcast continued on every screen. and more evidence kept emerging as the Free Voices released documents they had been collecting for years. Ambassador Thelin found them near the docking bay. The Valasian's face showed both joy and fear. "Commander Morrison, you have done something incredible and terrible. The Council will never be the same, but there will be those who want revenge, who will try to restore the old order." "What will you do?" Jake asked. "Join the Free Voices officially," Thelin said. "We are calling for a constitutional convention. Every species will send representatives to create a new system of governance, one based on consent and equality rather than force. It will take years, maybe decades. But thanks to you, we have a chance." They reached the docking bay to find their ship intact but surrounded by council guards. For a moment, Jake thought they would have to fight their way through. Then Karn appeared with a group of Free Voices warriors creating a path. "Go, human," Karn said. "Return to your world. Tell them what happened here. And when we create our new government, we will send for you. Your voice will be needed." Jake clasped Karn's arm in the warrior's traditional greeting. "Thank you. For everything." They boarded the ship and Lauren took the controls. As they lifted off from the docking bay, Jake watched the station recede behind them. Explosions flickered across its surface as fighting continued. The galaxy was changing, and he had been the catalyst. "What happens now?" Peter asked, monitoring communications from across the galaxy. "I'm seeing reports of rebellions on a dozen worlds. Species refusing Council authority. Some of the Council's own fleet is defecting. Now we see if sapient beings can actually govern themselves fairly," Jake said, "or if they'll just replace one tyrant with another." The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. During that time, news from the galaxy continued to pour in. Vector had been arrested by his own council, facing trial for his crimes. The Free Voices were organizing the Constitutional Convention, with hundreds of species sending delegates. Some council members were cooperating. Others were fleeing to the outer regions of the galaxy. There were problems, of course. Some species tried to use the chaos to settle old grudges. Pirates and raiders took advantage of the weakened council authority. Several worlds declared independence and immediately went to war with their neighbors. The transition from tyranny to freedom was messy and violent, but there was also hope. Species that had been enemies for millennia were talking. Technologies that had been suppressed were being shared. Young voices were being heard alongside old ones. The galaxy was becoming something new. When they finally reached Earth, Jake was greeted as a hero. Crowds filled the streets. Government officials wanted to give him medals and promotions. Everyone wanted to hear his story. But Jake declined the public appearances and celebrations. Instead, he went home to a small house where his daughter was waiting. She ran to him when he entered, and he caught her up in his arms despite the pain in his still-healing body. She had grown in the months he had been gone. She asked him 100 questions, and he answered them as best he could. That night, after she had fallen asleep, she asked him one more question. "Daddy, is the galaxy safe now?" Jake thought about his answer carefully. "The galaxy has good people in it from many different worlds. They're working hard to make things better. But there will always be new problems, new challenges. Safety isn't something we achieve once and then keep forever. It's something we have to choose every day by being brave and kind and standing up for what's right." "Like you did," she said sleepily. "Like lots of people did," Jake corrected. "I just happened to be the one everyone was watching." In the weeks that followed, Jake watched news from the galaxy with mixed feelings. The Constitutional Convention had begun, and it was as chaotic as he had expected. Species argued over representation, over rights, over resources. Some walked out in anger. Others tried to dominate the proceedings. But slowly, painfully, a new galactic charter began to take shape. It was not perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was based on principles that Jake recognized from human history: representation, consent, protection of rights for both majority and minority populations. Earth was invited to send delegates, and Jake was asked to lead the human delegation. He accepted, knowing that humanity's real test was just beginning. They had proven they could fight. Now they had to prove they could build. 6 months after the duel, Jake stood in the new assembly hall on Axis Prime. The building was different from the old council chamber. No throne sat at the center. Instead, representatives from 847 species sat in a circle, each delegation equal to the others. Decisions would be made by debate and vote, not by decree. Vector was not there. The former Supreme Commander had been sentenced to exile on a remote world, stripped of his rank and authority. Some had called for his execution, but the new government had decided that they would break from the old ways. Justice, not vengeance. Lauren served as Jake's deputy, and Peter had been appointed as Earth Science Liaison. Together with delegates from across the galaxy, they worked on the countless problems that faced the new government. It was hard work, frustrating and slow. There were days when Jake wondered if they had made a mistake, if maybe the old system had been stable even if it was unjust. But then he would see young aliens of different species working together on a project, or hear about a technological breakthrough being shared freely instead of hoarded, and he would remember why they had fought. One day, Jake received a message from Karn. The Draken warrior was now a general in the new Galactic Defense Force, leading efforts to protect member species from external threats and internal violence. "You changed the galaxy, human," Karn's message said, "but you did not do it by being the strongest or the smartest. You did it by refusing to accept that might makes right. You showed us that there was another way. We are still learning what that way looks like, but we are learning together." Jake saved the message and returned to his work. Outside his window, he could see ships from 100 different worlds coming and going. Some carried trade goods, others scientific delegations, others cultural exchanges. The galaxy was becoming interconnected in ways it never had been under the Council's rule. That evening, Jake made his weekly call home to Earth. His daughter answered, now attending school where she was learning about alien cultures and languages. She told him about her day, about the alien exchange student in her class, about the future she dreamed of among the stars. When the call ended, Jake stood at the window and looked out at the galaxy. Jake woke in the medical facility with every part of his body hurting. The doctors, a mix of alien species with medical knowledge far beyond Earth's, had worked for hours to repair the damage from the summit of Will. His hands were bandaged, several ribs were cracked, and his muscles felt like they had been shredded. But he was alive, and he had passed 2 trials. Lauren sat beside his bed, her face tight with worry. "The 3rd trial is tomorrow, the Arena of Champions. Jake, you're not ready. Your body needs time to heal." "I don't have time," Jake said, his voice rough. "Vector won't give me an extension. That's part of the test." Peter entered the room carrying his tablet, his expression troubled. "Jake, we need to talk. Something's wrong with these trials." Jake sat up, carefully ignoring the pain. "What do you mean?" Peter glanced around to make sure they were alone, then spoke quietly. "I've been analyzing the historical data on the trial of supremacy. In the last 500 years, 217 species have attempted it. Not one has passed all 5 trials. Maybe they weren't good enough," Lauren said, though she did not sound convinced. "That's what bothers me," Peter continued. "Some of these species were incredibly advanced, with champions who had trained their entire lives for combat and strategy. The statistical probability of all of them failing is essentially 0, unless the trials are designed to be impossible." Before Jake could respond, the door opened. Ambassador Thielen entered, moving quickly and glancing behind as if afraid of being followed. The Valasian's blue skin had paled, a sign of stress in their species. "Commander Morrison, I must speak with you urgently," Thielen said. "What I am about to tell you could cost me my position, possibly my life. But my conscience will not allow me to remain silent." Jake gestured for Thielen to sit. "Go ahead." Thielen's large eyes met Jake's. "The trial of supremacy is a fraud. It has been rigged for centuries. Supreme Commander Vector does not win through skill alone. He has access to detailed profiles of every challenger, their psychological weaknesses, their fighting styles, everything. The trials themselves are adjusted to exploit these weaknesses." Lauren stood up, anger flashing across her face. "That's cheating. Why hasn't anyone exposed this?" "Because those who try tend to disappear," Thielen said quietly. "The Galactic Council is not what it appears to be. It is a protection racket, a system of control maintained through fear and military might. Species that refuse to comply face sanctions, embargoes, or worse. The trial of supremacy exists to legitimize the subjugation of new species, while appearing to offer them fair treatment." Jake felt a cold anger settling in his gut. "So even if I complete the remaining trials, the final confrontation with Vector will be rigged?" "Yes," Thielen confirmed. "He will know everything about you. Your fighting style, your weaknesses, even your thoughts during the previous trials. You cannot win fairly because the game was never fair." Peter was already working on his tablet. If this is true, there has to be evidence. Data records something. There is, Thalen said. The Council maintains a quantum archive containing all the records of past trials, including Vector's manipulations. But it is supposedly impenetrable, guarded by the most advanced security in the galaxy. Supposedly, Peter repeated, his fingers flying over the screen. But every system has vulnerabilities. Give me access to your security networks and I'll find a way in. Thalen hesitated, then nodded. I will do what I can. But you must understand the risk. If you are caught, the Council will have justification to destroy Earth immediately. We're already facing destruction, Jake said. At least this way we have a chance to take them down with us. Over the next hours, while Jake rested and prepared for the Arena of Champions, Peter worked with Thelen to probe the Council's security systems. Lauren made contact with other species who seemed unhappy with Vector's rule, carefully testing their loyalty. What they discovered was both encouraging and terrifying. There was a resistance movement within the Council, scattered members of dozens of species who were tired of the tyranny, but lacked the strength to oppose it openly. They called themselves the Free Voices, and they had been waiting for years for someone who could challenge Vector and survive long enough to matter. The leader of the Free Voices was a warrior from a species called the Draken. His name was Karn, and he had lost his entire family when his planet refused to submit completely to Council authority. He met with Jake secretly in the lower levels of the station. Many species have tried to resist, Karn said, his scaled face grim. All have failed. Vector is too powerful, too entrenched. But you, human, you have done what no one else has managed. You have captured the galaxy's attention. If we can expose the corruption while you still live, while billions watch, we might have a chance to change everything. What do you need from me? Jake asked. Keep fighting. Keep surviving. Draw this out as long as possible. Give us time to gather the evidence and prepare to broadcast it across every communication channel in the galaxy. Jake nodded. I can do that, but I need something from you. Information on Vector's fighting style, his techniques, anything that might give me an edge in the final trial. Karn smiled, showing sharp teeth. That I can provide. I have studied the Supreme Commander for years, waiting for an opportunity like this. The third trial began at dawn. The Arena of Champions was a massive circular space with seats for thousands of spectators. Every seat was filled. Word had spread about the human who had passed the first two trials with unexpected success, and the galaxy wanted to watch. Jake stood in the center of the arena, wearing light armor and carrying weapons chosen from the Council's arsenal. He had selected a simple combat knife and a short sword, weapons that felt natural to his fighting style. 3 opponents would face him in succession, with no rest between fights. The first was a warrior from a species that looked like living rock, slow but incredibly strong. The second was a reptilian fighter named Scareth, known for speed and venom. The third was a champion from a species that could predict opponent movements through advanced pattern recognition. The first fight was brutal. The rock warrior hit like a landslide, and each blow that connected sent shockwaves through Jake's already injured body. But rock was predictable, following the same patterns of physics that applied everywhere. Jake used mobility, staying out of reach, forcing his opponent to overextend. When the warrior finally left an opening, Jake struck at the joints between the stone plates, finding the vulnerable flesh beneath. The victory was exhausting, and Jake had no time to recover before Scareth entered the arena. The reptilian warrior was everything Jake had been warned about. Fast, aggressive, and deadly, Scareth's claws carried venom that could paralyze with a scratch. He moved like liquid, flowing around Jake's defenses, always attacking from unexpected angles. Jake was losing. He could feel it in the way his movement slowed, in the way Scareth grew more confident with each exchange. The reptilian warrior's tail lashed out and caught Jake's leg, sending him sprawling. As Scareth moved in for the kill, Jake's mind raced. The arena itself had been built by the Council, which meant it had advanced technology. Artificial gravity, climate control, atmospheric processors. And if there was one thing humans understood, it was exploiting technology. Jake rolled toward the arena wall where he had noticed ventilation ports. He slammed his fist against a control panel, and the arena's gravity suddenly fluctuated. Scareth, caught mid-leap, tumbled through the air, his momentum carrying him into the wall with bone-crushing force. The crowd erupted in confusion and excitement. Jake forced himself to stand, using the gravity fluctuations to his advantage, moving in the brief moments when weight decreased. He caught Scareth off guard, delivering a strike that ended the fight. The third warrior never got a chance. As the arena's system stabilized and the final opponent prepared to enter, Jake collapsed. His body had reached its limit. The medical team rushed in, and the trial master declared Jake the winner based on his defeats of 2 out of 3 opponents. In the medical facility afterward, as doctors worked to keep him conscious, Jake knew he had bought time, but at a terrible cost. His body was breaking down. He could not survive 2 more trials in this condition. Peter appeared at his bedside, his face pale but excited. "Jake, we got it." "We broke into the quantum archive. The evidence is worse than we thought. Vector hasn't just rigged trials. The Council has been suppressing technological development across the galaxy, destroying entire civilizations that got too advanced, maintaining control through deliberate sabotage. Can you broadcast it?" Jake asked weakly. "Yes, but there's a problem. The Council's security forces know someone breached the archive. They're hunting for the infiltrators. We need to release the information soon or they'll shut down all communication networks." Lauren leaned close. "Jake, Vector just announced that the 4th trial will be tomorrow. He's accelerating the schedule. He knows something is wrong." Jake closed his eyes, his mind racing despite his exhaustion. They were running out of time and he was running out of strength. But they were close, so close to exposing the truth. "Then we change the plan," he said quietly. "We skip the 4th trial and go straight to the final confrontation. Challenge Vector directly.